Hello and welcome back to the new user training for the Sprockets database. In this section of the training, we're going to be talking about protecting participant data, so data privacy and security in the system. One of your most important responsibilities around data privacy is that you should be the only person using your login. So you should never be logging into the Sprockets database and then having someone else do data entry for you. And you should never be sharing your username or password with anyone else at your site. The reason for that is that anything you do in the database can be tracked back to you. So any data privacy breach would be tracked back to your login. You want to make sure that you're the only person responsible for that login. The other reason is that when we do notify youth and parents that your organization is using the Sprockets database, we say that only authorized documented users are logging in to use this system and see this information. And because it's very important to keep their trust, we want to make sure that that's really what we're doing. So you should not share your login with any other staff. Anyone at your organization who needs to use the database needs to view this training. They need to apply for their own login. We're happy to train volunteers, interns, even youth to use the system as long as they go through the training and get their own login. And just to underscore how important this is, if we do find out that people have been sharing logins at your organization, that you've been sharing your password with other staff, it may result in Wilder temporarily disabling your organization's site and having you re-sign an agency agreement stating that you won't share logins. So it is very, very important that you are the only person who's ever logging in as you. A couple other things related to basic internet security, because this is an online data system, you need to protect it like you would anything else that you do online. So you want to make a secure password, and once again, you do not want to share it. If you've been doing some data entry and you get up from your computer to go to a meeting, to go to lunch, you want to make sure to log out of the data system so that someone who isn't authorized to see that information can't sit down and see what you were working on. And then make sure to let Wilder know if you're going to be leaving the agency, and especially if you're a supervisor, if anyone who you supervise works in the Sprockets database, make sure to let Wilder know that that person's going to be leaving, just so that once they're gone, they don't have access anymore to that protected information. Make sure that you're keeping participant data private. So you should only be looking up youth who you work with as a part of your job. Even though if you're a larger organization, you might have access to some youth in other programs that you don't directly work with, you should only be looking up youth who you actually need to view as part of performing your job. You also want to be careful about sending participant data over regular email, just because regular email isn't very secure and some of that information could be viewed by someone who shouldn't be viewing it. So if you need to send an email with a question about a participant, especially if you're sending it to Wilder, we ask that you not include anything identifiable about that participant. So don't include their name or any other information about them. You'll see when we look further into the database that every participant has an ID number at the top of their record in the Sprockets database. You can use that ID number to send a question to Wilder, and that keeps that protected information more secure. Wilder also has a great service we can provide to you if you use another system like an online registration system or an internal database at your organization. We can upload information that you track in other ways. So if you have parents log on and register their youth online, you can send us that online registration file. We can upload it into the database and save you some time. But it's very important if you're sending a large file of participant data to make sure you're sending it securely. So what you'd want to do is request an email from Wilder. That's an encrypted email. We'd send that email to you, you'd log in, you'd send the data file to us that way, and that keeps that information much more secure than just sending it through open email. So those are your responsibilities related to your own login and your own job description. We also want to talk a little bit about your responsibility to make sure youth and parents know about the Sprockets data system. So there's a couple of different responsibilities related to that. The first is to make sure you distribute the data privacy notice. So the data privacy notice is a one-page document just letting parents know that your organization participates in the Sprockets database and outlining, here's what data we collect, here's what we do with that information, here's what your rights are as a parent or a youth. There's kind of a small version there on your screen of what the data privacy notice looks like. It's also available on the Sprockets website in the same web page where you're viewing this training. And what you should do with that document is, the easiest thing is to make sure that you include it in your registration materials so that parents are seeing that when they see everything else about your program. If you've already sent out registration materials that don't include the Sprockets data privacy notice, then you want to get it home to parents in some other way. So give it to parents when you see them, send it home with youth, whatever you would do with any other documents that you need to get home during the school year. And the data privacy notice is a passive consent form. So what that means is that it doesn't actually need to be signed and returned. It only needs to be seen by the parent. So you'll see that the data privacy notice doesn't have a signature line at the bottom. It's really just notifying the parent of what's happening and then lets them know if they don't feel comfortable about it that they should come and talk to a staff person. So your responsibility is to get this document before parents one way or another, either in your registration materials or by sending it home, but you don't need to wait for it to be signed and returned. And then your second responsibility is to document anyone who wants to opt out of the citywide report. So again, that data privacy notice says, if you don't feel comfortable with this, talk to a staff person. If a parent wants to opt youth out of evaluation, first do make sure that you're talking with them about what the Sprockets database is. Make sure that they know that only authorized staff with a login will be able to see this information, that the city is not receiving anything at an individual level about any individual student. All that's being given to the city is an aggregate report on what's happening in the entire city of St. Paul. So how many 10-year-olds are being served, how many youth in this neighborhood are being served. But if parents do understand that and they want to opt out, then what you need to do is give them an opt-out form to sign. That's another document that's on the same webpage that you're viewing. And that's the same data privacy notice, but it does have a signature line at the bottom saying, I don't want my youth data to be used in citywide evaluation. You want to keep the signed form on file. And then you'll see a section when we start looking at the database that's called data release that's on the participant's record. And there's a question called consent obtained for research. By default, it's marked yes for everybody because Sprockets assumes that everyone can be counted in the citywide report. If a parent does sign the opt-out form saying that they don't want their youth to be included in the citywide report, that's when you'd go in and switch that question to no. And that'll let Sprockets know to not count that person. So even when we're counting how many 10-year-olds are being served in the city, if that 10-year-old has no marked, we don't count them in the citywide report. So the youth can still be included in the database so that you can still report on them for your funders, but they will not be counted in citywide reports. And if you are doing the SAO, you cannot receive SAO scores for a youth that opts out. So just a quick summary, what we call this is being a good custodian of youth information. Youth are entrusting you with personal information about themselves. You want to keep that information secure. So do not share your login. Keep your login information secure. Keep youth information private and secure. Make sure to notify parents that your organization uses the Sprockets database. And then appropriately document any youth who want to opt out of the citywide evaluation. Those are your basic responsibilities to make sure that that participant information that you're receiving stays private and stays secure. Now for the next section of the training, we're actually going to start diving into the data system and looking at some individual screens and learning how to input information into the Sprockets database.